Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Streets Photog podcast. I'm your host, David Joseph Del Grand. And today I want to talk about making captions for social media posts. Specifically, I'm going to talk about a caption I made for a photograph, but I know that this technique can apply to any kind of post, especially if you're a creative that's making digital art or anything along those lines. Capturing an audience and really placing people in the situation that you were in order to relay a message is universal. So if you're just listening to this podcast, I'm going to be analyzing a segment that I wrote, not a segment, but a clip that I wrote for a photograph of a portion of a pickup truck that is juxtaposed against a wrought iron garage, and there's stripes on that garage that match the pickup truck, and that's originally what attracted me to the scene in general. So let me go over the actual text that I wrote and kind of break down how I get to that place. I spent a lot of my professional life as a professional journalist, so there's a rule of thumb within the journalism world that says show, don't tell. And my particular background and interest in poetry combined with being a professional writer at a journalistic level got me to a point where I have a certain style that can be very choppy, very to the point, and I think there's some easy kind of hacks to get amateur writers or experienced writers to this point. Here's what I wrote for the particular photo. Found some stripes in the stars. Poetry phone booth. Murals. Latrine planter. Soapbox, race car, obelisk. As the sun retired, 43 turkey vultures hawked when dawn blanketed our libation banquet. Now, obviously, there's a lot of places where you can chop this up and figure out where we're at. So the first sentence, found some stripes, that's referring to the stripes of the pickup truck and the stripes that are painted on this garage that matched. And coming from an American vantage point, stars and stripes kind of go together. So when I break into the second sentence, in the stars, I was more referring to in the clouds because I was hanging around Bisbee with my fiance and really just feeling great about life. So it was more a reference to being in the clouds or being in love. And I think an easy way to potentially get to a choppy sentence like in the stars, and that's the second sentence of the stanza, you could write out that full sentence. In my head, I was saying more like in the clouds because I'm in love. And as a writer, what you're doing constantly is you put something on paper or onto a keyboard, and you're going back and editing and chopping and chopping. Really, the beauty of writing is editing. I could have originally written the second sentence as in the stars because I'm in love, and in post-production I could have gone back and chopped up that sentence to make it really short, really concise, and give it a real punchy feel, more of a Hemingway kind of feel to it. And he really is one of the masters when it comes to language. 2 sentences in, we're at found some stripes in the stars. Poetry phone booth. That doesn't really make any sense unless you were there, or I give you a visual reference, but outside of a very famous hotel inside of Bisbee, there is a old phone booth that is filled with poetry. So you call numbers on this phone booth, and different poets throughout Arizona tell you their poem. Really, really cool concept. And me just saying poetry phone booth within this context, again, places the viewer or the audience there. And it's definitely creating a sense of mystery. And to get to that point, my experience kind of speaks how you get to that point and create that mystery. But again, you could have written out an entire sentence saying, came across a poetry phone booth. And in post, you could have chopped it to poetry phone booth. When I was really young, I was taught to just write, and in post, you could chop that down into a more palatable, more impactful, and colorful language. That's sentence 3. So we're at found some stripes, in the stars, poetry phone booth. Now we have a list, and there's 3 things in this list. Typically, when you're writing out a list of objects that you're coming in contact with or emotions that you're feeling, 3 is kind of a golden ratio on writing. When you're writing a list, I tend to write in 3s. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know that it works tremendously well. And there's different ways to do it. I typically just break up lists after a colon, and I use commas. It's very rare that I use an and in between all of the objects or feelings in the list, but that's also a really good Hemingway technique. It's very different, it will stand out, but it'll also leave an impact. I'm gonna go over it again. Murals, latrine planter, soapbox, race car, obelisk. And I'm gonna break down a little bit of these words. One of the greatest tools that I use when I'm writing is a crossword dictionary. That sounds really strange, I know. But if you're looking for choppy words to replace mundane words, like in this sentence, latrine, that's a toilet. Obelisk, that is a, oh goodness, it's like a monument. It's a mural, and it's exemplifying the passing of someone who is fondly remembered. When you write out a sentence like this, and I've done this before, especially if I'm in a rush and I'm trying to capture a scene in real time, it's really easy to just write out a list and say murals. I could have easily said toilet planter, because within this walk of this afternoon, I found just a toilet in the middle of this kind of side street that was painted very beautifully, that had a bunch of plants growing out of it. And it's not the first time I've seen that. But when you're first drafting a sentence like this, I could have easily written murals, toilet planter, soapbox, race car, monument. And then in post-production, after I get that scene created and captured, I can go and I can use a crossword dictionary puzzle, or a crossword puzzle dictionary, excuse me, and substitute substitute mundane language for really fun, obscure synonyms and antonyms for that matter. All right, so we're going to move past the second half of this particular stanza, and we're going to go to the last part. As the sun retired, 43 turkey vultures hawked when dawn blanketed our libation banquet. The beginning of this sentence, the clause, I could have easily said at sunset, but getting a little bit more lyrical and playing with language a little bit has more of an impact and becomes more of music when it comes to writing. All of my favorite writers of all time understand the music behind what we write as creative people. My first draft of this could have easily said at sunset, but that first clause I wrote it as the sun retired. Now, we were staying at a particular Airbnb in Bisbee, Arizona, and there's always turkey vultures there. If you don't know what they are, look them up. Fascinating creature, and they're here all year round. Really beautiful animal, and one of my favorites in the Southwest. There was about 40 turkey vultures hunting as the sun set, and my fiance and some of my friends are just kind of hanging out on this patio. Now, an easy way to make an impact about a large group of things, especially when you're not coming at it from a journalistic standpoint, when you can use a little bit of creative liberty, is to make a specific number. Now, I could have easily said in the sentence 40 turkey vultures, and that number wouldn't have stood out as much, and you can try it within your own writing. If I said 40 turkey vultures, I think you would have passed up on that. I'm not sure if 43 was the appropriate count of how many turkey vultures kind of hung out above our Airbnb at the time, but 43 puts a stamp on things. It puts significance. and I could have easily said 31 or 23. There is a difference, and it creates drama. It creates a little bit more weight in what you're saying. So as the sun retired, 43 turkey vultures hawked when dawn blanketed our libation banquet. And hawked was just a way of saying hung out. We're present during my friends and I just kind of, chill session on this patio. And hawked is obviously, a reference to a bunch of birds being in our presence that have a large presence because they're phenomenally big animals. I could have easily written that sentence as 43 turkey vultures flew, but hawked kind of gave a presence of foreboding, which I think a lot of people would feel if they're in the presence of scavengers in the desert. I mean, it can be pretty intimidating for people, especially if you're not used to it. We're at 43 turkey vultures hawked when dawn blanketed our libation banquet. Right there, I'm just coloring a picture of the sun is setting, we're about to have some drinks and have a good time. Instead of having, beers or wine, libation, it just has a little bit more class to it. And as you become a more practiced and professional writer, you're going to have these favorite words that you're going to use in a certain situation. This particular sentence could have turned out very, very mundane. And a lot of the times when I'm in the field, they're very, very simple, choppy sentences that I write just to capture the moment. Also, as a visual person, I'm constantly taking photos of just the scene, because if I'm at a particular mural or I'm at a particular cross street, I will just take straight documenting type of photos in order to be able to go back to that place as I flip through my photo page and I remember there was, what color was that house in the background, or was the street sign a little crooked? Obviously your brain is picking up on those details, but to have a visual reference, it can really spark your mind and your creativity when you're in post-production trying to add more flavor, color, and depth into your writing. Instead of, for this last word in the sentence, instead of saying party, I said banquet. And my original draft of the sentence, it ended with party, but I knew that word was going to be just a little bit too used and overdone. Everyone knows that word. Using some kind of synonym dictionary, you're going to go through and grab these words that have more pizzazz and they have more flash to them, and it's going to make your writing that much more memorable. And it's also going to create an ambiance as a photographer that you're really in the scene and you could really place people there, and they're going to have more questions. They're going to have a visual reference when they look at your actual image or video, and they're also going to kind of delve into the language that you get to flavor your visual representation with. Now, this is a really fun segment that I thought up when we were just about to leave Bisbee. I think this could add a lot of value, and if you're interested in more segments like this, please let me know. I'd love to share more of my thoughts about what it's like to create captions, and let me know if you think I missed something. If you're interested in supporting this podcast and my other creative adventures, please log on to my website, davidjdelgran.com, and purchase my first self-published softcover photo book, Lutes del Barrio. Peace.